So I just finished playing the new Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection for the first time. And I haven't sat down and done a first impressions review like this before, but I have some interesting thoughts on it, and I had to get it off my chest. You see, Battlefront II, the original from 2005, is my favorite game of all time. It's the first game I really formed a connection with, and it's really the genesis of my journey to where I am now with a career in game development. The game means a lot to me. And to be clear, I've never stopped playing it. I've been playing the original version on Steam or even the actual PlayStation 2 copy that I had as a child every year, multiple times a year. At the very least, I will play it for several hours on every May 4th. It's kind of my Star Wars Day tradition. I've taken days off work to do so. And that's left me in a bit of a weird spot here. Because this release has taken a interesting path. I've had a couple people tell me that they instantly have refunded the game. At least one person that is a very experienced gamer has told me they found it literally unplayable. And I can't say I blame them, because Asper has taken the bold call to change literally nothing. Sure, there's a colorblind option now when you launch the game, or sure, there are some newer versions of the multiplayer settings, but fundamentally, under the hood, the game is identical to the one that released in 2004 and 5. And I don't think the modern gamer is ready for that. In fact, I don't think they should be ready for that. To an extent, you have to consider the era in which these games originally released. Halo Combat Evolved was only 3 years old when the first Star Wars Battlefront released, and even though it didn't invent the modern twin stick shooter control scheme, it was the game that really pushed that forward. And you've got to remember, along with that, that control scheme faced heavy criticism from a number of journalistic sources and players upon its release. Of course, now it's been refined and is the de facto control for any first-person game. But within the context of its time, it was still a relatively new concept. And Battlefront is one of a few games that hasn't aged as gracefully, to put it mildly, in terms of how its controls feel to a user so many years later. There's significant acceleration on all of the inputs. I'd originally started playing on mouse and keyboard, and even I found that very, very difficult to do because of sensitivity settings not being up to what I want, although I do have rather uniquely low sensitivity preferences. But once I switched to a controller after a little bit of adjustment, it felt very normal to me, only because I have so many hours on the original and have continued to play them to this day. I don't think this game is going to work. I don't think this game will be a commercial success. I think they will face lots and lots of refunds, and I don't think there is going to be a sustainable large player base other than the ones that were already playing on modded servers on the original Steam Battlefront 2. And those players will probably just go back to their modded servers on the original Steam Battlefront 2. And it's entirely because of the controls. And that's a shame to me. I am thrilled with this remaster as such a passionate player of the original because it's so faithful. But it hurts me a little bit that I don't believe the modern audience will ever give this game a fair shot. I don't think people will buy it, and in fact, I can't even in good conscience recommend that people buy it, because it's just not playable if you're not already deeply familiar with how to do it, which is such a shame. Because even though it has its flaws, and it isn't a game that you can still look back upon and go, wow, this game is still incredibly graphically impressive, incredibly technologically impressive even today. There's games from that era you can do that with, and this isn't one of them. But it had such a beautifully simple core concept, a core play style, that I've never found anything that has scratched that itch to this day. And I wish players could have a chance to go and experience that for all of its problems. But I know they won't, and I can't blame them for that. And that leaves such a bittersweet taste in my mouth. I finished playing that game with the biggest grin on my face. It was some of the most fun I have had in an hour of gaming in ages, because it was everything I remembered. It was the first time I've ever sat down with something from my childhood in that way and going, wow, this is identical. Everything I remember as a kid is here. But oddly enough, for my favorite game of all time, I kind of wish it wasn't.